we're here. Well, I guess we're dreamers and doers now.
We are dreamers and doers.
Officially. So I'm here with Jenn Sprinkle of the Well Studio and one of the compilers of the book that we all just went through for our 30 Days of Prayer. And so we're here because you all, well, one, to celebrate that we committed 30 Days of Prayer, which is really exciting. And I really enjoyed reading the stories that you guys were sharing today and throughout the rest of the time. And then the questions that you have. So Jenn's here to answer some of those questions and, just talk about how prayer has helped us and then, how we've seen it work in your lives throughout this last 30 days. So maybe Jenn, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. So you probably know Kate lives in the North Texas area, and I do too. We're probably about 20 minutes away from each other, and tried to get to each other today, which feels like LA traffic or something. Everything takes forever to get to each other at rush hour traffic. But I'm Jenn Sprinkle. I live in Dallas, Texas, and I have been here for 3 years now from Texas. I've lived here a while, but I tell people my day job is I'm a graphic and web designer, and then my day dream and where my heart is for you guys. It's for dreamers and doers, because I have been down the road. I am a creator, a builder, a visionary, and I know what it's like to be all those things and just wrestle through all the things kind of that we brought up in the book, everything from comparison to fear, to doubt, to overwhelm and rest, and then just finding time to be with Jesus. I know the other day I had a friend who's not, she doesn't have kind of a faith walk, and I've always been really open to her. She has my book, she knows me, and she just said, I just don't understand what faith has to do with business. And I know that y'all are figuring that out. I love that Kate prompted this challenge for you guys to bring the two together. And I love what one of you said, that you have realized that God is your number one business partner. And that's the perfect way to say it. A lot of us operate as solopreneurs or solo dreamers, and I love that somebody just pointed out, like, he is our business partner, our dream partner. He's the creator of all of that. So I love the idea that he doesn't just drop us in a dream or a calling and then leave us to fend for ourselves. He desires a relationship to walk with us through the ups and downs, and that is what this is about, and Kate's created that community for you guys. So I'm excited. This will be fun.
Yeah, I would say the number one thing I kept seeing over and over was that people had a faith and they had a business, but they hadn't really thought about combining them.
Yeah.
Like, unless they had a specific faith-based business.
Right.
Like, I have in one of my businesses, but not in the other one.
Right.
Hi, Stacy. And so it was really kind of eye-opening to watch them go through that whole process and see how, like, every day their life and their business is based on faith.
Right.
Everything we do.
And that brings up such a good point. I think there are a lot of women, and probably some in your group, who do not have, and I use air quotes, kingdom-focused businesses, faith-based businesses. And I always love to tell women that it's not about having a kingdom-focused business to have kingdom impact. Because I see women who their impact may be just simply being Jesus to their customers or their vendors or the people that they interact with every day, or their employees. I mean, sometimes it's as small as, hey, I run a clothing boutique, and I'm Jesus to my employees every day and making that impact. So I love that you brought that up, because sometimes, and I think that's where we probably struggle with connecting faith and business, or dreams and faith, is when maybe we don't have a kingdom-focused business, but it all is. Our lives are, so you can't pull out business and separate it, or just the pursuit of a dream. You can't really pull it out and separate it. So that's a really good point.
And another thing that I really saw was that people had they had practical wins in addition to like just clarity and focus. Several people realized they were in the wrong business and that God gave them a new dream to pursue. And some people,
Oh my gosh.
got new clients that they weren't expecting, or found new finances, or sold their first products and different things like
That's
that.
awesome.
So just seeing how God used their faithfulness and especially, and they were always tied to something like, I was worried about something, but then I prayed, and God reassured me through something. And so it was just really exciting to watch him work through, like, with his people in those moments.
And this is such a great opportunity, because I know I struggle with this as a dreamer. I will dream really big. I'll even pray about something, pursue, work hard for something, and then once it's come to fruition, I'm already moving on to the next dream or idea, because I'm just a visionary, and I think a lot of us relate. We just have so many ideas that we are quick to move on to the next, and we fail to celebrate the wins, which is why I'm super passionate about community, is celebrating the wins. And Kate's created a space for that, for you guys to celebrate that. Like, sit in it for a minute, because I think a lot of times what happens is it reminds us of the connection to the Lord, the faith connection to our dreams or our callings. And once we keep identifying where God shows up, it just reminds us he's always there.
Yeah.
So that's super fun to celebrate the wins. Hi,
Yes.
Megan.
I would say the last thing that I saw a lot of people talk about, a lot of chatter about, was when we got to the freedom chapter. A lot of people were like, I'm just going to stick with this for a few days.
Some of the prayers you just have to just stay on and for a while. Yeah.
So we get you. We
Yes.
understand.
It's interesting. I spoke at a retreat in May of this year, and one of the girls walked us through an exercise where she asked us if you were given and this kind of, I know one of the questions was, are there any tools to assist in creating your mission and kind of getting that solidified? And this is one small little idea, but she asked us to, if we were given a blank billboard, what one word or phrase would we put on it? And
That's hard.
yeah, but it was a really good exercise to think about. It almost made you narrow down, like, why are you here? And mine was, I don't know if I just wrote the word free, or if I wrote free people. And I just think it was that light bulb moment for me that I really want to see women free, and women in this space of dreaming and doing free, because when God gives you big vision and calling and ideas, the things that hold us back, and I think about all the women on this earth that are feeling called to more, and can you imagine if you just envisioned all of us just bound by chains of fear and bondage? Like, we're not moving anywhere.
Yeah.
And what powerful movement would be if we were free. So I'm glad that your community started realizing the importance of freedom and just, gosh, if we would just all be free, it sounds so much easier than done. But
Sure.
but I mean, I think it does sound easier said, but I love that we kind of broke it down into 31 days of walking intentionally through the things we need to find freedom in, or the things that are going to help us find freedom. And so your women are doing it. They're finding it, and that's super awesome.
And I would say the number one thing that we feel stuck in is fear. I remember I went through a bout of like super high insecurity and fear in the last year or so. And whenever I read, it was the first time I went through the book, and I read the verse from Galatians, do not submit again to a yoke of slavery. And I was like, that's what my fear is. Yeah. It's just a yoke of slavery, and it's just keeping me in this place where I'm frustrated that I can't make a difference, or I'm so frustrated that I won't like get out and make a difference. But so I'm just like in this continual cycle of like staying where I shouldn't be, where I need to be like I think there are like three things. One is just writing the fears down. Like, what is the worst thing that can happen?
Yeah.
You know, and just
that is a practice that has been around, that just figuring out what are the fears, write them down, and then what is the worst thing that can happen. I think another thing is we fear that we're not going to succeed or that we're going to fail, but yet we've never defined what our success looks like. Our success, the easiest reach for success is how other people are succeeding.
Right.
But a lot of times if we sit down and think about it, their success isn't even what we're striving for,
right,
or defines what we would want. And then I preach it to myself, and we talk about it all the time. I'm thinking about getting a tattoo with this on it. I'm working on this tattoo. I don't have any yet, so it makes me nervous. But this whole just obedience over outcome. I think that we focus so much on the outcome, which is where failure just comes up.
Yeah.
Because it's the outcome we fail, or fear of failing. But if we would just be obedient and choose obedience over the outcome, God's already decided what he wants to happen, whether that's failure or success. He's already decided what the outcome will be. And so I think I need to focus more on just being obedient to the calling, which takes time, which you all are doing. You're spending time prayerfully asking God to show you what he's calling you to. And once he does, it's just the choice of obedience and what he wills to happen on the other side, whether it's, gaining clients or getting more business or selling more product. And I believe that there's always a place for strategy. I mean,
sure, we
talk about it. It is not like, yes, let's just obey and not, plan or prepare or seek wisdom or knowledge. I'm not saying that. I think we do what we can do in our power with balance and rest and prayer. And then we let God show up, because I hear a lot of women. We just hosted our first retreat in Colorado, and so many of our women just felt like they weren't enough. They didn't have enough. They didn't have enough resources, enough knowledge, experience, money to start or do what they wanted to do. And the truth is, we don't have enough. We really never do. We can never have enough. And that's actually how the Lord designed it. And I think we forget that, because he wants to be our completion. He wants to get all the glory. And there's so much freedom, I think, in that.
Yeah, I talk a lot about that too, because it's not just that we need him to fill in our gaps. We need other people to fill in our gaps.
That is the body. That's the beauty of the body of Christ.
Like that he's created this economy where we have to rely on one another, and so that's why it's not failure to seek those things.
No.
It's actually probably
how he designed it.
No,
it
of
is.
your calling.
Totally.
It is to try to do it on your own forever and ever.
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
And it's way more fun that way. I have actually, unfortunately, late in my life figured that out.
Yeah.
Of using the body of Christ and getting to experience that. And just like I said recently with this retreat, my speakers were my friends. And there was, Sharon was one of them. Hi, Sharon. There was something so sweet about looking around and seeing your friends. One of my friends says it's like a glimpse of heaven. Like you're all doing God's work together.
Yeah.
It's just more fun.
Yeah.
It's way more fun. So
and I'd say those are, community and obedience are probably the two top things that, like, from all the traveling I've gotten to do and all of the experiencing of the church in other places, those are the two things that always come up is, when we from our perspective, we're like, well, what makes you want to share the gospel all the time? And they're like, well, Jesus said to. And you're like, oh.
Yeah, you're like, oh.
We put it that way.
I overthink it.
Right.
So
and then the community where they really take care of one another in a way that I've not experienced.
Right.
In so many ways, but how that built them together and how that opened up a new avenue for them to worship through, which is always really interesting.
Yeah.
So those are the two biggest things that every time I come home from somewhere, I'm like, oh, I need more of that.
Yeah.
That's what I need in my life.
Yeah, definitely. And we are the sum of the whole.
Yeah.
The parts are the sum of the whole, and you just don't feel the pressure that you have to be everything to everyone. and you don't feel the pressure to do all things. I think as dreamers and doers, we all the things we want to do all the things, and the struggle is which of the things do you do first? Which of the things do you do? And I tell our community, I say, as you're praying these prayers, it's to pray them with open hands and open fingers, and let God sift out what He has not called us to.
Yeah.
I think it's fun, and our brains, I used to feel guilty, but He made my brain to create ideas. Like He made it that way. And so I can't look at it as a negative thing, but He also wants me to go back to Him and say, okay, which of these things, of all these things, all the things, does He want for me? So going back to prayer is important.
Yeah, and that dreams chapter wrecks me every time.
It's a hard one.
You should have watched that day. It was like ugly crying on the live stream. It was bad.
It's a hard one.
It's hard.
It's a hard one, but I think it's almost the one prayer that encompasses the whole book, because it's a hard one. It's a hard commitment to go through 31 days with one dream at the beginning, and then just say, God, at the end of this, my dreams may not look like how I started this 31 days. But I have found, like for instance, one of my dreams for 10 years, I'm a conference junkie. I love conferences. And one of my dreams for 10 years has been to host and create a conference. And when I say host, I mean like hundreds of people.
Yeah.
I'm not talking Women of Faith arena, not that. But like 400 or 500 people. That's just been a dream that I've had.
The little hotel ballroom.
Yeah, the little hotel ballroom.
Yeah.
But when we launched the Wells Studio, that was the dream I carried. And the Lord said, I want you to shelf it. I want you to put it back on the shelf, and I just want you to build community. And He recently just led us to take the idea back off the shelf, but it looked completely different. It looked very small and very intimate, and like Camp Well, a retreat for 50 women. And it was so small.
Yeah.
And I have no longer the desire to create this event for 500 or 600 people, but it wasn't painful, because the obedience was when He said, just put it back on the shelf. And I was obedient and trusted that that was what was best for me. Yes, it was hard at the time. I was like, no, I don't want to let go. But the more I walked in obedience, the more my heart was just open to just trust that. I love this idea that just because it's a good opportunity doesn't mean it's a God opportunity. And I want to just do God opportunities.
Yeah.
Because He's in those. And there was nothing wrong with there's purpose and places for large events like that. But for me, He had just something else.
Yeah.
So it can be hard sometimes, I think, to let go. But
Definitely. But it's always worth it.
always, always, always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even when it's hard.
Even when it's hard.
Sometimes especially when it's hard.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so we're going to jump into the questions. Did you have anything else on the mission statement one? Or
No, I think another great is working through Laura Casey's power sheets. A lot of you guys know about them. That's a great, not super quick, but I don't think mission statements ever are super quick. So that is a good tool, accessible tool, and not too lengthy to go through. So that would be one tool, I would say.
Yeah, and I'm actually doing a challenge kind of around this next week, but some of the tools that I've used have been to go back and look at sort of my life story and seeing where God has been leading me, to look at my spiritual gifts and see how He's gifted me, and my experience and all those things. So all of those different things that come together to form the whole of us and who we are. And when you get really clear about that, sometimes the story, the mission that you have just kind of like reveals itself.
Yeah.
So just going back and really reflecting for a long time on all of these different parts of your life and your story and how God's been weaving them together.
And like reoccurring themes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll see a lot of things. Because one of the exercises, we'd like plot out like our major life points, whether negative or positive, and then you just sort of see like the theme that emerges from those. And I know that the first time I did that exercise, it was super powerful for me, and so I'm looking forward to doing that with y'all. But So, Julie, I would suggest going to things like that too and just really going back. Because I know, Julie, you had she's one that had like a revelation of like a new community that she's supposed to build.
Yeah.
And so I think she's kind of working through some of those things. So
Very fun.
yeah, keep going back and mulling it over. And pray about it. He'll reveal it for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so she asked, what was your biggest faith lesson when creating the 30 days of prayer or 31 days of prayer?
Okay, so a lot of people don't know this story, but I just being a graphic designer, I designed every page of the book, formatted it, designed it. I was a little controlling about that, but I just wanted a beautiful book to read. So we get to the end of it, and I send off the formatted, designed manuscript, send it off to get printed. We did a pre-sale the week before, and pre-sold all these books, ordered them. So the order for all these books that were pre-sold was going through at the same time my proof was coming in. We're talking about your question.
Yeah, just
what
in
my
time.
biggest faith lesson was when creating 31 Days of Prayer. So here we had all these books ordered, printing, and coming shipped to us so we could ship them out. And the proof arrived literally, I don't know, a few days before. And my partner, Kelly, was down in Austin. I think she was in Austin at the time. And she called. I got a text at like 11 o'clock at night. She's like, I could be crazy, but I cannot find the chapter on motherhood. What page is it on? So I hop out of bed and I go grab the proof. It is nowhere in the book. I had totally left the entire chapter out. Like the whole chapter. And here we had, I think we had like $2,000 or $3,000 worth of books arriving. Already done.
Yeah.
And they were being shipped to me the next day. Talk about I just wanted to cry. I just wanted to cry. But what was not funny, it really wasn't funny. But here's how I processed this. It was like the biggest, it wiped our account clean. I mean, we're so grassroots, and it wiped our account. And what I had to do was go through this process, like, okay, failure. Now, what do you do with failure? So I had to, not be too hard on myself. I really had to choose grace, which is I think it's like on one of the first 5 pages of our book. I had to choose grace for myself. I am not perfect, and I'm going to mess up. And this was a big mess up.
Yeah.
I totally screwed this up. And then I had to say, okay, how God's going to use it. I just had to trust that what is meant for evil, God will use. And I know we quote that all the time, but I had to just go to it really fast. I just had to go there to Scripture, the truth in Scripture, and just claim it. Then I had to do what I could do to fix it. And there was really no fixing except to add the chapter in and go reorder about $2,000 to $3,000 worth of books. And then I just had to pray that everyone else would extend me grace. All the people we had to ship to, all of our contributors were expecting these books. And here's what God did with it. This is one of the coolest things. One thing he did with it is I had all these books that were missing motherhood. It could have been any chapter. It really could have been any other chapter, but it was missing motherhood. And I knew that there was a community of women who were not moms. And so they're most likely like college girls, singles, and empty nesters. And so I thought, okay, how can so we just started selling them one by one to college girls, empty nesters, and singles. We just sold them little special edition, put a little special edition sticker on there, and started selling them one by one. Here's something cool that came out of it. Some college girls got it. Some college girls at a college 5 minutes down the road from me got it. Could have been anywhere in the country. They invited me to come. They started a Bible study, going through the book, had about 20 girls regularly showing up that never talked about their faith. And it opened our eyes to an entire community that we weren't even thinking about. And it was college-age girls. We weren't thinking, who are like college-age girls, they've got like so many dreams. They've got the world all ahead of them. They don't have a mortgage. They don't have kids. They have all these dreams. They're not jaded yet. And I'm like, oh my gosh, these are like fresh, ripe dreamers that don't have anything just kind of, not as much holding them back. And so from that, we were open to this community of college girls, and now we're about to host our second college event for Dreamers and Doers in Austin at the end of this month. It's kind of crazy. So God used, but you just kind of have to, when failure just pops up, it's hard. Trust me, I don't handle it perfectly all the time. But I think you just have to have and I think that's another reason this book is such a tool, is you just, thankfully I had just walked through that, having to practice God's word and prayer. And I had it ready.
Yeah.
When I failed. You guys, I failed. I failed in making this book. And so, and the other thing I could look back and feel like I failed was just, I didn't exhaust every marketing tool out there. And I felt like a failure in that. That's part of my business. And I think I failed. Struggled with feeling like, oh, I could have done so much more. I could have done a blog tour. I could have had a launch team. All the things we learn to do when we're launching something, I didn't do. I didn't do any of those things. And struggled with some failure, but that's when I claimed the truth of obedience over outcome. I was like, you know what? I did what I could do. I didn't kill myself. I think as dreamers and doers, we'll work 20-hour days, and we sacrifice the people around us, ministry, friends, family. We sacrifice things in our life. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to do the best I can with what I have. And I'm just going to trust that God does not need my perfect marketing plan. I'm going to do what I can. And that's where the strategy comes in.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, it's crazy what he's done with my not so great marketing plan. He's done crazy things with it.
Yeah.
That I couldn't have even planned. So I think it's the obedience over outcome and the just claiming God's word right when we start feeling like we fail, and to choose grace.
Yeah.
So, hi, Merritt.
Okay, last question is, what was the area you struggled with most?
Oh gosh, when I wrote and went through it.
Yeah.
So my prayer that I specifically wrote was on comparison.
Oh yeah.
That's my thorn. And actually, I'm not even going to say it's my thorn as much anymore, because I really had to work through it. I had to. The only reason this book even happened was because the Lord forced me to just start dealing with it. Does it creep up? Yes. But I'm equipped more to just deal with it. So comparison was really my thing that I struggled with the most. You know, there's a million authors out there writing books, and I have never been called. I was not like a 10-year-old wanting to write a book. Like, I've never said, oh, I want to write a book someday. I'm going to be an author. So once you enter, when God literally one day just said, he dropped this idea to write this book in my lap at a conference, and I jotted all the chapters down, and we made it happen in like 5 months. So it came about before I even thought about being a writer. I'm not a writer. But once you enter into this space of writers, you're like, oh, this is a whole world of people that I now have to compete with. And there's all these things like how to get on Amazon's top bestseller list and how to build a launch team. And all these people and so I was like, should I even enter this world? Because this isn't what I felt like such an amateur. Yeah, like a fraud. I really kind of did feel like a fraud. And so I just had to I have a friend, we tell each other #blinders. Nice. That's kind of our little, when we're starting to struggle, we just say #blinders. And that just means, we just get tunnel vision. Yeah. You just got to put them up and stick to the obedience thing. Like you just got to walk the narrow road of obedience, put up the blinders and not look around. And I know if you've read the book, you read our little pre-chapter and our story of how we even got to writing the book, which was my own wrestling through all these things. Like I was paralyzed with fear. I was comparing. I was looking around and saying, oh, other people are doing something similar and so much better. Is there even room for this idea? So, and that was with us trying to launch the Well Studio. And I just realized mid dreaming of building the Well Studio, the Lord was just like, Jen, all this struggle you're walking through, you being paralyzed and comparing and fearing, the women you want to gather in community are walking through the same thing.
Yeah.
So if you want to love on them and encourage them, you got to get them.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'm just going to lean into this and I'm going to feel it all.
Just gonna go.
I'm just going to feel it all. I'm going to feel the fear. I'm going to feel the comparison and the overwhelm with all the ideas and the fear of I don't have the resource. I'm just going to feel it all, walk through it, and God redeemed it through the book, which is so insanely crazy.
Yeah. I find that I think a lot of the biggest dreams that we have come from those personal wrestling.
Yes.
Like I would even say, like even me jumping into what I'm doing now,
Right.
all came from a place of like me wrestling with some different things that were happening in the marketplace. And it sounded like a lot like what you were going through when y'all started Well Studio.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting how these things that are so painful, God redeems them in such unique ways into new dreams that we didn't even know were possible or consider, a year ago, let alone.
And I was just thinking one of my favorite phrases is free people, free people. If I really have a heart to free people and it says free people, well, you have to be in bondage of something to become free. You have to understand bondage to understand freedom.
Yeah.
And so I think it's so much like what you're talking about, like don't be so devastated by failure and struggle and trial because it's time and time again in Scripture. It's what God uses. It's our favorite story. It's my favorite stories. And so I'm like, okay, yes, I'm like in a story right now. I always think of that. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to lean into this. I'm going to lean into this really, really crappy, sucky part of my life because God is in the business of redeeming. It's the gospel. And so in a weird, very weird way, I kind of get excited about what's on the other side. I know I probably need some
but I think
psychological
that's one thing
help.
You learn as you go through things. You know that it's not the end.
No,
right?
and as you get older, Sharon can attest to this. I'm not young anymore. As you get older, you just realize you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, there's time and time again that God has redeemed the hardest part of my story. So growing older isn't the most horrible thing.
Good to know.
Yeah. Don't worry, you youngins, young kids.
I happen to think it gets better.
Oh,
I don't know.
it
I
does.
feel like
it does.
I'm much better now than when I was 20.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, well, that's all the questions that we have. But Jen, do you want to talk about Well Studio or anything like that?
Yeah,
Anything
we're
coming
just. I love what you guys are doing in these small. Kind of want to steal Kate for myself, but I love this, like what y'all are doing and engaging in this way. It's awesome. This is hard for okay, so I'll be honest, comparing. Sometimes I struggle with all these incredible Facebook groups that are just killing it and engaging and doing such awesome things. And then I have to realize that's right now not what God's called me to. And I think we have to be so careful that success or strategy is the same for all of us.
Yeah.
Like for you, this is the perfect outlet for you to connect with your community. For us, we have found it's a retreat. It's a 4-day retreat. We call it campwellsummit.com. And we're getting away twice a year with 50 women and doing such a similar thing. And so I have to realize that's the space that God's called me into. And we just hosted our first one in Denver. Megan was there and Sharon, and it was just a sweet time of God doing crazy, awesome things. So that's what we're up to with Camp Well, with the Well Studio, is we have Camp Well Summit. And then if you're in the Texas area and you're young, you're a college grad or college student or recent graduate, we've got kinshipsummit.com. Kinship Summit at the end of, I guess it's October 23rd. So that's super fun. If you know anybody who's